Welcome everybody to our Organic Week webinar series where we are here today with Chef Harriet Clunie.
Hi, so nice to be with you.
We're so excited to have you, and we are live in Tia's kitchen. So I'm excited to have foodies in my house cooking with me, showing all sorts of organic wonderfulness that's going to be made into awesome recipes for you all today. And we're also just going to be talking about organic. We're going to be talking about how to preserve organic, how to enjoy organic, and how to make deliciousness out of organic. So I'm going to pass it over to Harriet, and I'm going to just be here hanging out on the sidelines having a chat and being her sous chef. So please,
that's right.
Use me and abuse me as much as you need to.
I love Tia's kitchen. It's great. It's gorgeous.
Awesome.
I love all the wood. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here. I'm super excited to be here. And so today I'm going to be doing two things. One, I'm going to walk you through one recipe. And then while that's in the oven hanging out, because it's kind of boring when it's just in the oven, I'm going to show you a couple tricks that I have developed over time of being a restaurant chef and how to keep your produce as long as possible, because we love organic food, but produce it's on its way to its grave as soon as you get it. So the longer we can keep it, the fresher it is, the more nutrients it retains, and the more you get out of the extra dollars that you spent on the organic food to help the earth and yourself and everybody. So that's actually one of my deep passions. I have a little show called Scrap Cooking where I show people how to use the odds and ends that you would often just throw in the compost or the garbage and turn it into something delicious. I'm going to take my beautiful organic parsley, and while I'm doing this, I'm going to show you how I store it, because again, I have had lots of dead parsley in my fridge. I'm sure you have too. However, so the first thing I do when I get a bunch of parsley from the store is I take off this band, tag, elastic, whatever is holding it as a bunch, because basically it strangles it and it cuts into the stems, and then it then you get moisture, and like I said before, excess moisture is your enemy. So by taking it off right away, you're not going to strangle it. You're going to let it kind of breathe a bit, and it's not going to cut into our stems. So then I take a deli container. So I use a lot of these, and I don't love using plastic, but I do reuse a lot of them from if you're at the grocery store, you've got you get a whole pineapple cord or whatever. So reusing things is a big one. But the other thing you could use if you don't have any of these is if you had any like 1 liter or 750 milliliter mason jars. That works too. So to store them in the fridge, and they will last a really long time if you do it this way. So I take them here, and I used to put a bag over its head and put it in a little bit of water, but then I found that the condensation would happen in the bag, and it would last longer, but it still wouldn't last as long as I would like. So I started experimenting, and now I have discovered that if I do this, and you think it's gonna crush it, but it doesn't, we're just bending it. Light bend. So I kind of just tuck everything in and make sure all my little stem ends are at the bottom. And then we're gonna add a little bit of water. And I mean a little bit of water. I used to put it in and it was too much water, and that kind of encouraged mold growth and things like that. So really, if I'm at the sink, I just go, psh, that's it. Just psh, that's all. So we're gonna go, psh, that's it. So it's really not a lot of water. It's just a tiny little bit. Now I'm gonna get my trusty roll of paper towel, and I had a sous chef once who told me that he was gonna get a tattoo of a paper towel roll because I insisted that everything, unless it's already a liquid, gets paper towel on the bottom and on the top, unless it's water on the bottom. So, because he kept forgetting. So We're going to take paper towel. It doesn't matter what kind of paper towel. It could be the Bounty or like whatever you got. It's all good. So we're just going to fold it into a little square, and I'm going to tuck it in here.
It's like a little.
It's his hat.
Like a blanket.
Yeah, we're tucking him in. Having a nap. And then we put that.
Okay, I seriously didn't know that. I have wondered because people have given me like herb preservers and all these gimmicky things, and that's all you had to do.
That's all you had to do.
Interesting.
So I've got. So I'm also a big fan of green tape because it doesn't leave, and green tape is painter's tape. Doesn't leave the, like if you use masking tape or a label, it leaves its residue behind and it's sticky and it's gross and then anyway. But like I've had this parsley for at least a week, if not 2 weeks, and it's perfectly fine.
Wow.
So you'll see that the top, because the condensation, the fridge opening and shutting and changing the temperature, it does get wet. But that's what we want because it's protecting the leaves from excess. So a little bit's okay. And that little tiny bit of water that's in there, it's still in there. It's good. And so every so often I'll change the water because it gets kind of like
skanky.
Yeah, exactly. But for the most part, it's pretty good.
Do you change the paper towel at the top too? If
it's really wet, like I would probably switch this now. Mm-hmm. But like this parsley is completely fine.
Smart.
Yeah, so that's how I keep it. And then usually when I'm putting it in here, I'll also go through the stems. Like I'll kind of, before I put it away, I'll kind of open up the bunch and just take out any ones that I think are going to turn, because like I said before, it's like a virus, like it spreads. So once this one goes, it'll infect another one, and then another one, and then the whole thing is gross. So as you're putting it away from the store, you just take out any of the ones that are kind of gross, and every so often I'll do it again. Like anytime I'm using the parsley as I'm going, I'll kind of take it out and go, okay, what do I got? And pull stuff out. So.
I'm so happy to learn this because I just grew a whole bunch of coriander in my garden, and I'm like, oh, but I'm going on vacation.
If so you do it like this, like I would love to know if you put it away like this, whether it keeps going to come back.
Better because I grew it.
Yeah, I totally get that for sure. So I'm just gonna do that same thing. So this one's too wet. And it can go in my compost bowl, which is over somewhere. There it is. Ha!
Okay, Chef, what do we do with these guys?
They can go back in. They're not quite done yet, so we're going to put them in for 5 minutes. Okay. So yeah, so I'm just putting his little chapeau back on. And I always have a trusty Sharpie parsley. And I usually like to put the date. What are we today?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. It's the summertime.
It is August.
It's August. So then I'm going to just go like that. So he's ready to go in the fridge, except that's not where we're putting it. Haha. So these little kind of on their way out pieces, they're going to go in our compost. Oop. Again, the moving island. Yeah, there we go. So back to my parsley. So I am of the mind that everything, unless it's black carbon, can be used for something. Sometimes I don't know what it is yet, and so I just kind of like put it aside and then
dehydrate it.
Something. So we are going to use these stalks in our sauce. So I'm going to cut them off. There's actually more flavor, sort of the flavor compounds, in the stems of herbs than there are in the leaves. So I'm going to put that in there for after.
That's why juicing is so good.
That's right. I mean, you can use parsley stems in so many things. They're so, one, good for you, and two, they're nice and crunchy. I usually like to add them to whatever it is. So whenever I'm using parsley, I usually use the stems as well. But you can also kind of put them aside and save them for a sauce. I've got make chimichurri with just the stems.
Oh, yummy.
Mm-hmm. Or kind of like a parsley pistou or any herb.
It's funny
leafy
how
herb.
people don't, like, how did stems get a bad name? You know, like, everybody's like, just get rid of that.
Yeah, well, it just from what my understanding is that it's sort of the mentality that we just have in the West, which if you go anywhere else in the world, like they're using the stem, they're like they don't throw anything out, and somehow, and I think through big agriculture and through consumerism and through from the 50s kind of on when we started losing our connection to the land and connection to the roots of things, that we just wanted the prime cut of whatever it is. So for cauliflower, it's just the floret. For herbs, it's just the leaves, where there's so much more flavor in the rest of it, mm-hmm. and we've just lost that knowledge, and we've lost so much knowledge in how to cook as well. Mm-hmm. And so, like, one of my main goals is that I really just want to teach people how to use everything that they've got, and be able to draw that connection back to being excited over a strawberry or tomato or whatever.
Or my coriander.
Or your coriander, your cilantro. Amazing. I love it. Yeah, and so gardening's become bigger, so that, like, we're going back. So where the pendulum swung too far one way, and now I think we're on the way back.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to be a facilitator of that knowledge.
Well, COVID helped in that regard, right?
Totally.
Everybody made their sourdough.
Everybody
bread.
made sourdough.
Everybody got a garden. Everybody was eating at home. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they had time to cook. And that is unfortunately one of the problems. It's time versus money.
Yeah.
So the less time you have, the more money you'll end up spending on food because you don't have time to make it, which means that you're probably getting more convenience foods because you don't have time. And I fall into that as well. Like, as a chef, and I've done various things as a chef, being in the kitchen, owning a restaurant, running a restaurant, and I'm just ragged by the end of the day. So I'll eat Annie's or like ramen noodles when I get home because all I want is carbs.
Right.
And
something quick and easy.
Something quick and easy that I could eat right away.
Yeah.
And so we've lost time.
Well, I obviously live a very busy life too, running an organic association, and I just batch cook. I batch cook on Sundays, and I put it in the freezer.
Amazing.
And share with neighbors and hope they share with me.
Yeah, so I do really hope that there's more of this sort of batch cooking. People get more into that, but also more into sharing with their neighbors, because I get so bored of my own food. And that's one of the other problems with working long hours as a person in food. Those look great. They probably actually just need 2 more minutes. Yep, 2 more minutes, exactly. They're just a little soft in the middle. We want them to be completely hard. So I've got my nice parsley chopped up. May I have another tiny bowl?
You're lucky I have a lot of tiny bowls.
Yeah, when I cook at home, it's all the pinch bowls. I've got stacks of stainless steel bowls. It's very funny. So I'm just gonna put this parsley in here. So I've got my parsley stems. That's gonna go in my sauce. So I'm gonna bring it over here. And then I'm going to cut this parsley up. Some of it. We're not gonna cut all of it. And this is we're gonna save for later.
With his chapeau.
With his little hat, yes. Yes, my little hat. You may go in the fridge. That's for you. And the rest of this parsley, we're just going to cut it up. And I don't even worry if there's little bits of stems. They're crunchy. I like them. But we're just going to use this as a garnish on top. Maybe just a little little stem. You can go back in there with the other stems. So I personally, you can cut your parsley as fine as you like it. If you like it more of like a little sprinkle, like then just keep chopping until it's little. I like the texture of it, so I like it to be a bit on the bigger side, personally. But like I said, it's just a personal preference. So we're just gonna this little rogue stem.
He doesn't want to be left out.
That's right. You gotta return him to his friends.
I think that's gonna beep. Should I get it?
Yeah. All right, so parsley over here. Okay, so while we're waiting for our cauliflower sauce to soften all the pieces, we're just gonna cook this cauliflower since we have it. So why not? So we're going to, you can either olive oil it in a bowl or on the pan. I'm gonna do half and half because I have too much cauliflower and olive oil together is olive oil. I have too much cauliflower, so in the bowl for me to toss. So we're gonna do this. So I've got my nice organic olive oil. I'm gonna kind of coat it. And I'm going to do the same over here. And then one of my little tricks for when I do vegetables like cauliflower or root vegetables like carrots is I actually put a little bit of vinegar. I toss it in a little bit of vinegar and then I put that, whatever's left in the bowl, I put it on the pan because it helps. By the end of it cooking, it'll be evaporated, but the steam that it creates will actually make it go a little bit faster, and we'll keep it a little bit moister because the steam's going into the cauliflower.
Are you just putting vinegar, no oil?
I put oil.
Oh, you did?
I was sneaky.
I missed it.
So I'm gonna do that. So I've got some nice rice wine vinegar, organic, and rice wine vinegar is a little less acidic than most vinegars. Most vinegar is at 5% acidity, whereas rice wine vinegar is usually 4 or 4.3. So it's a nice choice if you're not looking for the kind of punchy acid kick, which I personally like, but depending on what you're doing, you don't always want it. So now I'm gonna toss.
I feel like you should do the pizza.
There we go. And I just kind of, if I do it in the pan, I just do it with my hands. Like I said, there's no wrong answer. There's no wrong way to cook. There's just more efficient ways. So we've got the salt on there, we've got olive oil, we've got vinegar. So we're just gonna throw it in the oven, and while it's in there, if you can turn it up to 400,
yeah,
that would be great. Because that's gonna help facilitate the browning of it, because the nice crispy edges is really, really what you want when you're roasting cauliflower.
How long do you want that on for?
We're going to do 10 minutes and then just see where we're at, if we need to adjust the temperature, or it probably will take a little bit longer than that, but we'll just see where it's at in 10.
Okay, great. So,
in the meantime, I've got some thyme here. Oh, so many jokes always. So we're going to add a little bit of thyme to our sauce, but we're also going to add some as a garnish. So we're going to strip some of these. Now this is a lot of thyme, so we won't use all of it, and then I'll show you how to store it, because it's very similar, but it's slightly different. But all variations of paper towel usage. So.
I was going to say all we have is time. We just have to keep going with our puns.
That's right. Oh, the kitchen, so many puns. We're all very punny people. Just don't get anybody started with beets. There's too many. Yeah. So with a thyme stem, some are woodier than others. The softer, if it's bendy and it comes off, it's edible. Like, it's not gonna be a little stick. But this one feels a bit sticky. So I'm gonna do that, and yeah.
So you go up, not down?
I go up, yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so I don't know. I find it easier. You can go down. Sometimes I go. Really, it just depends. Like I said, there's no wrong way. So when I go down, then I usually leave the top bit because it usually falls off. Comes with it, and when I'm chopping it, then I'll add that, which is why I go up, because then I just pull it in one fell swoop as opposed to doing 2 motions. So.
I have one of those
Strippers.
Useless.
Yeah.
Totally
I mean,
useless.
in theory, they're great.
Yeah, but not.
But unfortunately not.
They don't work.
Yeah. And then, yeah, so I think that's, I like a little bit more. So we're going to do that. La, la, la. Oh, if I could turn back time. I know. All right, so after this guy, I think we're good. Now, I've got these thyme stems, and these leaves I'm going to throw into our mix when I add the noodles. But these stems, I am going to, hold on. Where did it go? Oh, did I put it up?
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for
Your compost?
No, I'm looking for what we had the parsley was wrapped in. The little...
Uh-oh.
That's okay.
TSU chef, and I threw it away. I'm sorry.
That's okay, because what I was going to do was strip because it's really just a little piece of wire. But an elastic will do, or a piece of string. So it's just a piece of wire that has like paper on it that holds the... So if I'm in a pinch, then I'll take that, I'll strip it perfect. So little elastic like you would have on your herb bunch that you've removed because we put it away nicely. Now we're just going to take these stems, and so I would just use the wire. So I like to take these stems and make them all one little bundle, because then they're all going to stay together. And we're going to put it in our sauce.
Oh. It's like a little witch's brew going on.
That's right. Yes.
Add your herbs now.
Little bundle. Let's turn it down a little bit.
So are those really fragrant? I never really thought to keep those.
Oh yeah, thyme stems. Like I said before, there's more flavor in the stems of herbs than in the leaves. More volatile compounds. So they're good for stock. They're good for sauces. That kind of thing. So yeah, so I often just like keep them in my freezer door. I've got a number of containers like this, and I keep various things in them. So one, I'll keep like things for stock. So pieces of tomato and carrot tops and celery and those kinds of things. Then I have one for sort of more Asian flavors. So I usually keep like mushroom stems, like shiitake stems. They're not really edible, but they still got a lot of flavor, and so they're good in a liquid.
Yeah.
So keep them, and like the peels from ginger. If I peel it, I usually don't, but sometimes I do.
Yeah.
Garlic, like the skin of garlic and the skin of shallots and onions. I'll keep those in there. And then when I've got a whole deli container full, then I'll make a stock.
Yeah.
And then I've got lovely
Yummy.
flavored broth to use instead of water.
Yeah.
So now I've got these guys, which I'm going to cut very shortly, but we're going to put these guys away. So it's a little small for this container, so I might have a mason jar that's a little bit smaller that I might do it in, but the concept is the same. My very trusty paper towel. So these ones really don't like to be wet at all, and they kind of get black as they go. As soon as they touch water, they kind of turn black. So I kind of do I don't know. So I kind of put paper towel on half of it, and I very loosely roll it around it. Because we are going to add about the same amount of water as we did before. But this way, so we've got these this way. It's protecting it from the condensation that's on the sides of it. Whereas the parsley and cilantro, it doesn't matter as much, but I find thyme, rosemary, and tarragon to be like very susceptible to turning black very quickly. So I do that, and then we're gonna just add our little
So how
water.
long do you really think that would last? Like in pretty good condition?
You keep it, like I've had thyme be good for a month.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
great.
And that's, in a restaurant, I've just seen so many things go in the garbage or the compost if they're a composting restaurant. That just breaks my heart. So I've been really, like, my entire career really like, how can I make this better? How can we do this so that we are not spending so much money on things that we're just throwing out? So it's been a passion project of mine.
Well, that's awesome. Better for the earth.
That's right. So I got my trusty green tape. I'm gonna label it. There we go. And the nice thing about the deli containers is that they stack.
Okay.
So now I've got my thyme. I'm just gonna give it a quick little. And I'm gonna add it to my parsley. That's where you're gonna use as a garnish. And then whenever I'm kind of scraping the cutting board, I always use the dull edge of the knife. Because that's going to keep your knife blade sharper for longer. Because if you do it with your blade, it really does a number on it. So it takes a little bit to kind of get used to doing it that way, because it took me a little while, but I've been much better for it. My knife has been much happier. I'm going to show you a couple little tricks. So we've got mushrooms. So when you get mushrooms from the store, they come in a little package, usually like this. Sometimes you can get them in the brown paper bag, which is also really great. But if you do get them in a container like this, that's covered in plastic. Mushrooms are like mostly water, and so it doesn't take much for them to get slimy and gross. So again with the paper towel, I know.
You're obsessed with paper
I am
towel.
completely obsessed, and yet I have results to back it up. So I feel sound. So we're just gonna line it. We're gonna line it, and we're also going to keep it uncovered. We're gonna cover it with paper towel, but we're not gonna cover it with the plastic that it came in or with a lid or anything, because it actually really needs to breathe. So the best thing is actually like a little cardboard box or the little paper bag that it came in with a little bit of paper towel underneath it. So now I've got my mushrooms back in its container. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but just cover it that way. And so instead of them getting super slimy like they would in the container, they actually just dehydrate. Because I don't put them in the produce drawer either.
Oh.
I just leave them in the open, because really the refrigerator is a giant dehydrator.
Right.
So that's why your carrots get all... Your celery goes. And those you can rehydrate. You just put them in water and they'll come back.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So I just kind of tuck it in on either side. Yeah, so instead of getting slimy and gross, they just dehydrate, and it slows down their rotting phase by a lot. So I've had mushrooms that I've completely forgotten about and found them and was like, oh, there may be one gross one and the rest are totally fine.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's how I like to keep my mushrooms, and that could be any kind of mushroom. Some rot faster than others. Oyster mushrooms are particularly susceptible to slime. Slime. Even if they're stored, their shelf life is much smaller than a lot of the hardier mushrooms like these or oranges or shiitakes. Yeah, so that's how I do mushrooms.
You go out shopping and you bring home everything and you just like take your time to repackage everything.
That's right. Exactly. And when I'm organized, which isn't always, when I'm organized, I also kind of make little kits for the week. So I'll cut my carrots or my peppers or whatever, and then I'll put them in a container and line them with paper towel. And then they're cut and ready to go. So then I can just grab them on my way out. Or just cut them up further or cook them as they are.
Right.
So I do like to spend like almost like a day, kind of take Sunday as like my cooking day, where I go to the market and then I put everything away properly and then I do a little bit of prep and then things are ready for the week. So now I'm gonna, honestly, like it's paper towel, paper towel, paper towel. But we're going to do the same for these lovely organic spring mix. We'll take the little plastic off. I'm not going to remove it entirely because it is useful. We do want it to have a lid. So I'm actually just going to go like this. You can do it. Usually it just kind of stays in its shape. And I'm just going to do the same thing. We're just going to put paper towel underneath.
So if you just bought it in bulk, you would bring it home and do that to a Tupperware container or something?
Yep, exactly. And while it's out like this, I also like to kind of just take a peek and see if anything is going off. Exactly. I do find for some reason, I don't know if it's scientific or not, but I do find that purple leaves tend to turn faster than green ones. I'm not sure if it's something to do with like the anthocyanin, which is like the purple color, like it's scientific, but versus the chlorophyll, not sure. However, in my experience of doing this, I definitely find purple ones. So I usually kind of look and see if anything is going to turn and pick out anything that is, and then I usually just put it back.
That's smart. Jam it back in there.
Gently. Like I said, it usually stays in its same shape. There we go. So, and then I'm just going to do the same on top. And you don't want to pack them down. They do need space. They do want a little bit of air because too much contact will cause it to bruise. And bruising will lead to water, which will lead to mold, slime. And like I think some of the worst smelling vegetables are like rotting lettuce and rotting potatoes. Potatoes are the worst.
Yeah.
Oh.
And they grow into some like monstrosity. Yeah.
Okay, so our cauliflower mac and cheese is in the oven. And while that's happening, I have a couple other ingredients that I thought I'd share how I like to preserve them longer. So I've got this beautiful organic Swiss chard. I love Swiss chard. Oh, I love leafy greens. So what I like to do, again, we like to keep like things with like things. So our stem has less water and is less delicate than the leaf. So we are going to strip it.
What?
Yep.
I've seriously never seen that.
Yep, so I strip them. I strip them all. They kind of like to fold themselves. So I do that. I pinch it at the bottom there, and then I just kind of rip it and then pull. And then I've got the whole middle. I just do it with everything.
Can you do that with kale?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, because if you kind of just keep it in a bag, you'll notice that everything kind of just goes.
Yeah, totally. It
Sad. Gets sad and wilty. So this way, you keep your leaves like we did with the greens. I mean, we really keep the stems the same way. We just keep them separate.
No,
and by
kidding.
keeping them separate, it seems to preserve them longer.
Okay. That is good info.
Mm-hmm. And if you're, the leaf, pretty much this guy he's just a little flimsy, but really if you wanted to, you could just rehydrate it in water. Like it's just dehydrated, which is also handy to know.
Instead of thinking it's bad.
And throwing it out, you just like soak it in water for 20 minutes and see what happens. There we go. So we've got our stems and we've got our leaves and we have our favorite trusty paper towel. So the leaves, I've got this Tupperware container that I do like that. We're just going to pop them in like that. You could cut them up smaller if you want to just be able to take a handful and throw it in something. I find that really helpful for me as a cooking when you're in a rush. However, the more cuts you make, the more moisture there is because you're cutting it so that there's an open wound essentially,
right? So that
its shelf life will be a little bit shorter. But if it makes it easier for you to use it as opposed to not using it,
right,
and then it's better. So it's really just up to you. And we're gonna do the same with the top.
So if you were to cut it, like maybe now it would be good for like a week or two using this method, but if you cut it, it would cut it by like 50%?
Pretty much, yeah, exactly. So if you know you're gonna use it within a week, it should be fine. Right. Especially if you get it, like the nice thing about it being summer in Canada is that we have all this beautiful produce like at our doorstep.
Totally.
Sometimes like your cilantro.
Yeah.
So it really does last a lot longer when it's fresh. Whereas like in the winter time when we get it shipped in from Mexico or California or Florida or whatever, then it's already used up part of its life on getting here. So it's kind of done. So then we just put a little lid on it. Now, because I like to use a lot of paper towel, this is also why I use my handy painter's tape, because you can't always see what's in it. And I find, or if you're using the sort of stainless steel containers instead of plastic, I find that when you can't see it, you're less likely to use it if you don't know what's in it. You're like, I don't want to open that. Yeah, exactly. So the green tape and the labeling, and when in the fridge, it kind of looks like a little store. And I have all the labels out front so I can look in the fridge and then I go, okay, I've got parsley, I've got lettuce, I've got strawberries.
Is there anything that you don't do this to for your produce?
For like anything that's already a liquid, pretty much. So, but yeah, I'm trying to think.
Like your carrots. Would you do this with your carrots?
Yeah, I would do it with the carrots. So with the carrots, I would keep it in the bag that it came in. I mean, like, food companies spend millions of dollars trying to keep their produce from going bad.
Right.
And so they're looking into technology, into what shape the box is and where to put the holes in and where if there's holes in a bag or not.
Right.
So often what they come in is usually pretty good. However, you still are going to get that, because our refrigerators are not like a big walk-in or a big refrigerated truck where there's more control over the temperature. Because our fridge is so small and we open and shut the door, it means that the temperature inside our tiny fridge fluctuates more. Therefore, there's more condensation.
Right. Okay.
So that's why. So if I get a 5-pound bag of carrots, I'll just shove some paper towel, like I fold it like I do, and then I put it on either side. Okay. Same with peppers, same with zucchini, anything that comes in a little bag. I usually just keep it in the bag it's in, or I transfer it But yeah, so what am I doing? I'm labeling. Labeling!
I'm distracting.
Chard. There we go. We've got our Swiss chard. And now we're going to do the stems. So the stems I'm actually just going to cut a little bit smaller. So I'll cut it in 3. And I like to use the stems kind of like you would celery almost, or so like I'll cut them on an angle, the Swiss chard stems, and I'll throw them in a stir fry. I love them. You can cut them really tiny, and you can put them in like a tuna salad or chicken salad. Yeah. I've even pickled them before. I pickled beet stems.
What?
Yeah.
Pickled. we were joking about pickles the other day, and just like not knowing that you can pickle pretty much anything, but that a pickle is not like a product in itself, that it's a cucumber.
Yeah.
It's a cucumber.
Yes.
It was a great conversation. But it's like, yeah, you can pickle beets, you can pickle onions, you can pickle
pickled
carrots.
onions are pickled onions and shallots are one of my favorite things in the world.
Oh, shallots.
Yes. So I've got my little smaller container. I do the same thing. I mean, really, it's just, like I said, the name of the game is keeping excess moisture away from your produce. That's really all you're doing.
Awesome.
But yeah, I love chard. And like, so if I was going to cook Swiss chard, I might do it all together, but I would do it separately. Same thing, like that they're separate. They're 2 different textures. They're 2 different fiber content and all of that. So I would start, if I just wanted Swiss chard on its own, I would cut the Swiss chard stems, maybe on a bias, maybe in chunks, but I would start them with garlic and butter or oil, and then I would at the very end just add my Swiss chard leaves, or even when I pull it off the heat. Like the Swiss chard is so delicate, like it's like kale is quite hardy, so it actually takes a good amount of like cooking to get it down, whereas Swiss chard, like you can just throw it in something and it'll go and then it's gone. So we're gonna label our chard stems. So, now, bet you didn't think I was going to put paper towel on the hummus, did you?
I think you are. I think you totally are.
Now you do. So, our lovely hummus. It's the same thing. Like, really, it's just moisture. When the lid gets condensation on it, it drips down, and where it drips is where you're going to get your mold patches.
Interesting.
So by like keeping the top of the lid, and you don't need a lot, like just a little guy.
Okay, so question.
Yeah.
This is probably a stupid question, but I can
No,
ask
there's no stupid questions.
Why? I guess the food manufacturers couldn't just start this off like this hummus manufacturer. Why did they have to put this plastic lid? Why couldn't they put a little like layer of paper to protect it?
So it's likely because there's no oxygen in it, whereas a piece of paper is porous. It will, and the more oxidation, more oxygen it gets, the faster things are going to turn. That's why we have antioxidants, because things are oxidizing, so they're on their way out.
Right.
So the plastic, they probably have a machine that kind of like vacuums out of the oxygen.
Okay.
Sometimes, like in a bag of chips, they might replace it with a different gas.
Oh.
I believe it's nitrogen. I could be wrong, because it's heavier than air. So oxygen would sit on top of it, so it keeps it from touching the product. So then it will stay fresh longer. So by keeping the by putting the plastic, they're keeping it from oxidizing. It still does, though, can get some condensation for sure. I mean, it's also not pretty.
Right.
We eat with our eyes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm used to using paper towel. I mean, like, people come into my kitchen and they're like, what are you doing? I totally get it. It's totally a little bit bizarre. I understand that. So sometimes if it's just like new, I won't touch it if it's new. We're just pretending. But if I've opened it and then I'll add something, and I usually just place it on the lid itself. And if it touches the hummus, like, it's fine. Like, pretty much it'll get wet, like we saw with the Italian parsley little hat that he had. It was totally wet, so it'll do the same, and it just peels off. You might get a little bit.
Sorry, Harriet. I gotta check this out. Look at this.
Oh, that looks good.
Do you think it needs long?
Timing. So now we've got our hummus. That's gonna be nice. Like, I've had hummus that I've done this for, and again, like, I've had it for a month and not worried about it.
Wow.
Like, so, like, it really did, like, it, like you eat with your eyes, so you're like, oh, paper towel is kind of ugly. I get it.
But you know, I have a question, because I made hummus with these black chickpeas, and I was all excited about it was delicious. I froze it. Is that okay? Because I haven't taken it out yet. Is it
should be fine. So it might. So, like, hummus is an emulsion because, like, oil and water, they're not friends.
Right.
They're really not friends. But they have a mutual friend. Their mutual friend's name is lecithin. And various things naturally have lecithin. So mustard has lecithin, garlic has lecithin, egg yolks have lecithin, chocolate has lecithin. All those things, soy has lecithin. So all those things is the mutual friend of oil and water. It helps blend them together so they don't separate like a vinaigrette.
Right.
They're more creamy. So that's your mayonnaise, your hollandaise, hummus, some soups, lots of things that are an emulsion. And so your hummus is like oil, water and chickpeas, water and the lemon juice, and then it's got the tahini, which also has some binding power with all the garlic.
Right.
And so it's like one big mess. So when you freeze things, especially an emulsion, basically you're making the water expand, thus breaking your emulsion.
Oh.
So it may look a bit chunky, but really if you just throw the hand blender, it should be fine.
It should be fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, so our macaroni and cheese is almost done, but we just have the perfect amount of time for me to show you this one last thing. So we've got these beautiful strawberries, gorgeous organic strawberries. They look amazing. I'm excited to eat them after dinner. So again, strawberries, their leafy part is going to die before the berry part. So we're gonna take the stem off, and then I've got a little piece of paper towel in there because everything is paper towel, and we're gonna put them in here, but we're gonna put them upside down on the cut side down. So we're gently going to take them out. So the other thing that's nice about doing this for your berries, because like I said earlier, once you get one starting to mold, it will start to spread to the other berries. And berries, they're expensive and they're very delicate and they bruise very easily. So they are precious and are prone to mold. So I'm just gonna take the little tops off. Now I actually make stuff out of this piece. So I usually—
Like what?
So I make either strawberry syrup or strawberry vinegar.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I just kind of throw them in a pot with either water and sugar or straight up vinegar.
Ooh.
And then I just bring it to a boil or just a simmer, and then I turn it off. That's it.
What kind? Just white distilled vinegar?
You can do white distilled vinegar. Really, it's whatever you have. You can use white wine vinegar. You can use rice vinegar.
Ooh.
And then I use that to make like a nice vinaigrette.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
I do make my own vinegar, so I'm doing that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna do kind of batches at a time. But because you're taking the strawberries out of the container, you're also, as you're going, you're picking out the ones that are already bruised or already molded. Now, if you have one that's already bruised but it's not moldy, I actually usually just keep a little Ziploc bag, like freezer bag, in my freezer that I put berries in.
Ooh.
So then you can use them for your smoothie. So you're not throwing it out, because if you didn't go through it.
Do that. Thank you for telling me that.
Yeah.
You should see the mishmash of berries going into my fridge right now. It's a nightmare, and they're all going to be rotting like amazingly because I didn't know all that you just told me.
Yeah, exactly. So then I gotta take these guys, go in my bowl. Right. Get in there. And then these guys. So I kind of line them up. Gently.
If you're going to eat them, though, like within 3 days, do you really have to do all this? No.
You don't have to if you're going to eat them in 3 days, for sure. Okay. I mean, it's really, it's about, like, for me, I'm really good at leaving things in the fridge and having them rot. And it breaks my heart. And then I also come from a kitchen mentality where you get lots of things, and yes, you're going to use a lot of those things, but the longer you can keep it, the less you have to keep buying it, so you're saving money because you're retaining it for longer. And yes, it is a lot of work, but so I totally get it. It's basically time versus money. That's what it all comes down to.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
So if you don't have a lot of money, and I mean, let's face it, a lot of people who don't have a lot of money also don't have a lot of time, so I also understand that. But if you do, if you're tight on funds, this is a good way to stretch your money, because everything that you buy, you're going to use to its maximum. So you're not going to be throwing out as much, which means you're not going to be going grocery shopping as much, which means you're not going to be spending as much money.
Yeah.
So it's good that way. So, yeah.
Yep. And it's a question of priorities as well. And, you know,
absolutely.
They say that we spend not enough of our budget, not enough of our time on food preparation. And, you know, just figuring that stuff out. And I love that you're giving all these tips and tricks to figure out how to make organic affordable.
Absolutely. And that really like speaks to my heart. I'm middle class, but I've grown up, cooks were working poor.
Right.
So, like, money's been tight in my life. I've lived paycheck to paycheck for the majority of it.
Right.
And while I didn't have any time to be able to do this, it's not that you need to do all of it. It's that you can pick and choose. It's just adding more tools to your own toolbox so that you can say, oh, I need to stretch this. How can I do that?
Right.
And being able to have that choice, as opposed to just watching money like go down the drain because you've just thrown it out, which is just, I hate doing it, but it's happened to me so many times, and that's kind of what sparked all of this kind of trial and error. Like, I have I'm not learned in food preservation. I didn't go to school for it or anything, but just through trial and error from having walk-ins and being on a budget for the restaurant, I've been able to, keep food costs down, and then also be able to use better quality ingredients such as organic, because I keep them in their most pristine form for longer. Right. Because that's, like restaurants have, like, all our intentions are good. So, like, this guy he's bruised, but he's not moldy. So I'm going to put him in a separate pile, and we're going to put it in the freezer for a smoothie.
Nice.
Yeah, but so restaurants, like, we all want to buy organic. We all want to support small farmers. It's just not necessarily feasible for a lot of chefs, for a lot of restaurants. I've been very fortunate in my career to be able to work with organic producers, and local farmers as much as I have. And so that also is part of the spark. It's like, okay, we've just paid this money to these beautiful people that we've known. I've known a lot of them for years, and I don't want to have bought their beautiful, gorgeous produce and then have it die in my fridge because I couldn't get to it in time. So keeping things that way has also allowed me to be able to support the small farmers and the small organic growers that I so cherish.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and, you know, even just me being a little gardener, it's like, man, you know, you grow something and there's so much love in it and it tastes so fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't spend the time in the summer to preserve those things, then you won't have the goods.
Exactly.
And I always do the math. I do the math every time I can something, and it's like, it is so much cheaper in the end. But you got to put in some labor.
Well, that's it. It's work. Like, it's all work. It's work to make the money for you to afford to afford more convenience foods, and it's work to keep the food that you have when you don't have the money, but maybe you have a little bit of extra time, or you're budgeting your time to do that so that you have more homemade food. So it's all work. It just depends where you're putting it. So. But it's also a labor of love, and it's a labor of preservation and of roots and of connection and of community and all of that stuff. So it always makes me happy when I'm able to use the thing that I bought, because I also often buy more than I need. I'm one person, and I'm like, oh my God, those peas are so amazing. Oh my goodness, this Swiss chard is amazing. And then I've got this beautiful bounty. I get home and I'm just one person. and I can't eat it all. So then I'll figure out how to. I know. So that's also part of it. So.
Well, one year I got sucked into a Costco membership all because like the amazing mushrooms were so much cheaper. And I was just like, and then you realize, oh my goodness, the portion sizes are massive.
Yeah.
And so that's when I really started doing the whole trading economy with neighbors. Because it's like, okay, I'm never going to be able to eat all this. Like, I'm going to cook it. I'm going to give you the dishes or the fresh whatever that I've got.
Yeah.
Even the cheese, right? Too much cheese, too much whatever.
Totally.
And you just start trading. And
yeah, I love that.
Just, isn't that awesome? Because then it's not
totally
your
awesome.
Same food all the time.
I really think that we need to move, and we are moving towards that model. I mean, just with housing, with food, you know, we're moving back to where we were before the 50s, before the war, where we just need to use everything and make sure that everybody gets part of it. So, and that if you're the grower of, you know, corn, that's all you have. You don't want to only eat corn. It only makes sense to kind of share and say, okay, I'll give you some corn, you give me some beans, you give me some squash, I'll give you some chocolate. Like, so it's really encouraging to see these movements, see these sort of small communities, buying houses together. In Scandinavia, they have sort of communal housing where like everybody has their own little unit, but there's a big communal kitchen, and every family takes turns like one day of the week making the dinner for everybody, or the lunches, or the whatever. So it's not only on the one family.
Yeah.
And that is definitely something that like our sort of post-1950, post-war has been driving us towards this like individual, you are your own person, you are only looking after your own self, and that's it, and you have to do everything. And so now we're kind of swinging the pendulum back a bit and kind of getting back to this sort of community, taking care of everybody, so that, you know, many hands makes light work.
Exactly.
So, and I really think that is just going to keep growing, because as inflation goes up, as housing costs goes up, as food costs goes up, necessity will
turn us inward.
Exactly. Yeah. So necessity will force us to make choices and do those things. So that's the small silver lining of post-pandemic life.